Hello, hello. I'm April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and yes, I do actually work from home, and I help people who work from home find better life and work balance. But today I'm coming to you as a parent and talking with you a little bit about some of the many choices that we have right now for school options. For those of us who have kids, we are being flooded with options. At least a lot of us are. In my one school, I have a kindergartner, and she, I think, had 12 to 15 different choices for a lot of reasons. There's different kinds of programs, and then there's the half day and full day, and then it was, did you want to be online all the time or in person all the time once the state allows it, or a hybrid this or a hybrid that, lots of different options. It was a little bit difficult to make that decision, to say the least. So I'm coming to you to talk to you a little bit about just the terminology. I can't help you make a decision for your family. I don't know where you live. I don't know what your choices are, but let's just talk about the words that are being thrown around and what they mean. Some things start to sound alike and you get confused. Like, well, what does that mean when you say that? Because it's new for, summer of 2020. Just so you know, I do not have a K through 12 certification, but I do have a master's degree in adult education. I am an adult educator, and I also have 4.5 years of experience working as a substitute teacher, which put me into public schools, private schools, charter schools, and I was helping actually preschool all the way up through 12th grade. So I have been in a lot of different buildings with different administration, different cities, different states. So I would say that I have at least been exposed to a lot of options. I also came from a homeschool family before it was cool. So I'll talk a little bit about that and how homeschooling families are picking and choosing some of the best parts of some of these different options and making it their own for this year. So let's do a semi-brief overview of these different options. I know that some of them will be familiar and some of them might not be as familiar. And here we go. So our parents and our grandparents usually had about two choices: public or private school. Public schools are usually responsible to the Department of Education for their state, and they're publicly funded at a local, state, and federal level. Private schools are obviously funded differently, so there might be scholarship opportunities, but generally there's a tuition involved. So charter schools have been around for, I think they've been growing in popularity for 10 or 20 years, but there are multiple choices for charter schools as well. In our area, we do have public charter schools, and there's the traditional methods with the more classical style of education, where you see the kids sitting in desks and rows, usually using a lot of paper. The mainstream options might use some more of the progressive curriculums that are out there right now, and some people choose traditional because that's best for their children. Others say their child needs to be in a different kind of classroom, and the charter schools have a lot more flexibility with what they can provide. But let's go back a little bit. We're going to step back to the younger children. All right, so early childhood, we're talking about the kiddos age birth, infant, through usually 5 or 6 years old. It depends on if your region, if your country is including kindergarten as part of the preschool or the elementary programming. But early childhood usually is just referring to all of the things for children up until they start their formal education in usually kindergarten or first grade. Daycare is implying that your children are being cared for. They are being supervised and given safety and usually art materials, toys, and socialization. Nursery school is a term that I actually think comes more from the British English, at least in my experience. Can mean daycare, it can mean childcare, it can mean preschool or play school. It just depends on who you're talking to. When I think of nursery school, I usually still think of the childcare situation where there isn't necessarily a curriculum. In play school, again, it just depends on the program of your school and what they're offering and providing. If they are saying that they have a curriculum and it's play-based, that might be different than just like, hey, these kids are going to play and we'll keep them safe and we'll keep them fed and probably, help with potty training or something like that. Then we have preschool. So preschool is when we're talking about curriculum. We're talking about young children ages 3, 4, 5, generally, before they go to kindergarten, but when they're ready to start learning their ABCs. There's still usually a lot of playtime, manipulatives, toys, crafts, snacks, and potty training, possibly still. It just depends on your school and what their program is like. So preschool usually leads us into pre-K. Pre-K might mean like the 4 and 5-year-olds who are getting ready for kindergarten. Montessori kind of blends the ages together, so you often see the 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds together in one classroom. Actually, you'll see the infant classroom, and then the very young primary, and then there's, I can't think of the terminology exactly correctly, forgive me, all of my Montessori friends, but there are names for the different classrooms, and they usually group them in ages of about 3 years. That way the kids can learn from each other. They're taught how to use the specific works or the tools that they have in that classroom. They're beautiful materials, really. And there's a lot of different preschools, but actually some people don't even know that Montessori actually can go up through high school even if they follow that method. There are curriculums that go through elementary school and even into high school. It starts to look a little different at that point. Waldorf is another, people usually think of it as preschool, but they actually do also go into the elementary school years as well. They also have the mixed age classroom, but they're based more on imaginative play. And they also have a curriculum of books that they like to go through. Outdoor school is for those families who like their kids to like learn from being out in the outdoors, digging in the dirt, planting seeds, and learning from nature, learning their reading and writing outdoors. I actually have a friend who has a kid in Minnesota where it's cold, very, very cold, and they have outdoor school. They just bundle them up and send them on, and they have, you know, they have the right environment for that sort of thing. And then I also have a friend who was part of an outdoor school here in Arizona where it's extremely hot and they made it work. So outdoor school is literally like outside. Out school is a completely different thing, and that's where we're going to start talking about this terminology. Out school is actually an online program. It's kind of like Netflix for school, maybe. It can be certified teachers. It can be people who have, you know, a bachelor's degree or something like that, or people who maybe don't even have a bachelor's degree who are skilled in teaching different things, all the way from academics into the creative arts and crafts, music, teaching literature, lots of things. So this is where we start to see people supplementing their regular school choice with maybe some extracurriculars, especially when we're online with a lot of people at home. That's when we see signing up for, just say, like Spanish lessons online. Outschool is paid. You pay usually per class, or like if you're having a recurring class that goes for the whole semester, you might pay per week or for the whole short course. They have lots of different camp options and everything like that. So we're talking Outschool where you can kind of mix and match and find your own teacher that you like, and some people are using it for homeschooling. Some people are using it to supplement. Some people are using it just for summer. So, but you are hearing of a lot more teachers who are kind of doing this as a side income, or a lot of families who are saying, hey, while I'm at work, my kids are taking a few Outschool classes, and that gives me a few minutes where I can focus on my work. So online school basically is saying my kids are literally on a computer taking their classes, and it will often be with their own school district. Some schools are offering online classes exclusively right now during this pandemic time before the state is allowing students to come back, or some schools are offering this as an option. Our school is offering online school, and that's what our family has chosen to do this year. But that aside, online school usually means that you are on a computer. You do need to have like a webcam. You're usually interacting. Sometimes it could mean that you are watching videos and just turning in projects in a digital format. Sometimes people are still having to print their papers out, and the kids are filling them out and then uploading them into the classroom so the teacher can see. And that is kind of how it's working with my kindergartner right now, because, you know, they're still practicing handwriting and coloring skills. And so there's a little bit of that. All right. You will hear a lot of people also talking about supplementing their income with online ESL school, and that is a little different. ESL means English as a second language, or you'll hear people teaching English as a foreign language, that sort of thing. So here in the United States, we don't usually see people taking ESL classes unless they actually are learning English as a second language, but there are a lot of opportunities. And it's interesting because I actually have taught ESL online for about 2.5 years to kids and adults. And it's really interesting because some of them want that North American accent, or you might have that international flavor where they'll have teachers from all over the world, so that if a business person is in an international company, they might be more accustomed to speaking with people with various accents. All right, so homeschooling, let's go there. I think I mentioned already that I was actually homeschooled, and it was back in the 80s and 90s before it was cool, definitely before it was cool. I was homeschooled for 7 years. And it was a good experience for me. We were still doing everything usually with books. My mom had purchased curriculum, and we went through that curriculum. Nowadays, there are so many more options. People are still choosing like book curriculum, but also online curriculum. They're supplementing with Outschool or online school. Some people say that they're homeschooling, but actually they are enrolled in an online school, and the parent isn't teaching, another teacher is teaching. So I'm going to try to narrow that down a little bit here as we go along. All right, so homeschool co-ops. This is something that we didn't have when I was a homeschooler way back when. It actually is something that's it's cool because they have that homeschool experience, or they're at home and they're able to have all that flexibility and options that come with that. You know, the parents can choose their curriculum and they can pick the best parts from all of the different things we've already talked about and what we will talk about going forward. They might be able to take a little bit of the Montessori and the Waldorf and, you know, some of the mainstream versus the traditional versus all of the different things and build it into their own thing that works best for their family. A co-op will bring kids together once or twice a week or once or twice a month and let them have that socialization time where they can work in group projects, or they can have a class where a teacher or a parent who's overseeing this group can help them learn a skill, maybe a more advanced math or language, or just, you know, I don't know. I haven't participated in one of those except for when we had our children in a homeschool Montessori. Our preschoolers years ago, the parents came together. We all came with our children. We brought them in, and one of the moms was teaching us how to do a lot of the Montessori techniques, the language, the lingo, the works. So it was very small. I didn't get a break from my children during that time. It was still very cooperative, but then our children got to have that classroom experience too. Okay, so going forward here, Unschool. I didn't understand what this was at first. When I learned about it, then it made sense. I have some friends that unschooled and I just didn't know that's what it was called. So unschooling basically means you're homeschooling without a specific curriculum. You're using practical life and just your adventures to learn about the world around you. It also can mean that you take an interest that your child has. Say, for instance, they're really into cooking or really into robots or something like that, and you kind of do a deep dive with them and you use that to like practice reading, math, physics, all of the different things. So the cooking, you're reading the cookbooks, you're measuring and learning fractions, you're learning about chemical reactions and even physics. Robots, I mean, you can do the same thing. You're like reading about robots and you're using that to learn all of the math and social things. What I've been trying to say, social studies. You can use that to learn and explore the world around you. You'll also see a lot of people who say they're unschooling do like a lot of field trips, really going out into the community a lot and just being part of the big world around them. So pod school, this is getting more into some of the pandemic stuff. Actually, they're usually called learning pods these days. That's what I've seen coming through my social media feed. So a pod school or a learning pod, this is when we're starting to talk about families who are in an effort to social distance or to stay socially distanced from many, many families and to stay out of public. They might bond together with one or two other families, maybe 3 or 4, people who might have similar ideas about the pandemic and how much they want to social distance. You might see, you know, if the public school is closed to in-person school, you might see 5 or 6 kids coming together into one home, and one parent could be overseeing their online studies or their distance learning or whatever it's going to be called, or they might actually have unenrolled them from their regular school and gone ahead and said, we're going to kind of homeschool them our own way this year, and we're going to just make a pod, and we're going to have this parent teach them like we would if we were homeschooling because we're all working parents. Or we might just say, we're going to hire a tutor or a nanny or something, a certified teacher even, some of them are. But a lot of times they're also thinking about micro schools. So micro schools and pod schools basically both are having the small class, usually just a few families getting together. It is definitely a smaller size. You often see the mixed ages, so siblings may be together. I want to say you might even see in a micro school multiple ages, even more than you would like in Montessori. They probably do try to usually match them. I have 2 friends who are doing a pod school together, more or less, through an online program with the school. And it's convenient for them because both of their kids are in the same class. So they only have 2 different teachers for 4 kids. It's actually probably working pretty great for them. And one of the moms is overseeing the children while the other mom is working full time. So Prenda is another name that usually comes up when you're hearing about micro schools, and it's just a brand name, I think, now at this point, where they have interactive component where you have the kids getting together, and then there's an online component. So they have that social time where they're working together as a group, maybe doing an art, craft, activity, something like that, and then they go through their curriculum for the rest of the time. It might be a full day, it might be a half day, it just depends on the age of the children and what program they're enrolled in. When you hear pandemic schooling, that's more of an all-encompassing term, and I probably should have gone over this one way earlier in this presentation, but pandemic schooling is basically any one of these options. anything, homeschooling, public, private, charter school, any of these things. And then now we're putting over the all-encompassing fact that things are different this year. Even though we normally are doing public school looks different right now. Even though we normally homeschool, even homeschooling, everyone thinks, oh, homeschoolers, nothing's changing for them, but it is. Homeschoolers are used to going on their field trips and going to the park, and their physical education might be in community sports or something like that, and a lot of those programs are stopped or stalled or paused at this point, delayed. So pandemic schooling is just recognizing that things are really different right now. We made a choice, and then that choice got changed on us. And so now we're having to make a different choice, and the choice that we're making might not be the choice that we would have normally chosen in a regular year. That's how I feel right now. Pandemic schooling is just acknowledging that things are not normal and they're not even ideal, but we're all in it together, and we're unexpectedly homeschooling this year, because a lot of people who are choosing to do something like a pod or a micro school or homeschooling take a lot of time to do that research, and a lot of people are finding that their situation is changing day by day. The school or the district had said they're going to do this, but then they changed it, or the state had said we were going to open on this day, but then they changed it, and oh my goodness, everything just got pushed back to after the first of the year or at the end of the month. And so some families are scrambling, and solidarity, friends, we are all scrambling right now. We in Arizona actually started school 2 weeks ago. I know a lot of people are starting next week. I know a district in my area who are starting on Monday next week, and they just announced that they are only going to be doing in-person school. And so all of the other options that other communities are having will not be an option for that city, unless they were to change to maybe a charter school or a private school. So people are scrambling, and usually people like to feel like they have their ducks in a row. Like we purchased our school supply list for that teacher, and now that teacher is not going to be our teacher anymore. You're seeing a lot of rotation in teachers right now. And it is what it is. I don't really have a judgment about any of it. I just know it's just different. So distance learning, in the past, back when I was a homeschooler in the 80s and 90s, I had some friends who were doing what we would have called correspondence school. So they weren't grading the papers. They're actually mailing the papers to a teacher. They would be corrected and they'd be mailed back. And nowadays, distance learning can just imply online school, or it can mean remote school. It can mean a lot of different things. When I think of distance learning, I think of teleworking. It means that we are not all sitting in the same room right now. For some teachers, they might be in their home teaching their students in their home. Some of them are teaching from their schoolroom by themselves. Home-based school is what our school is calling it right now, but it's basically the same thing. Our students are not at school physically. They're working out of their homes, but the teacher actually is sitting in the classroom. And it's supposed to be a temporary option right now. Our school is saying we're going to do home-based school for such and such many weeks, and that number keeps changing, of course. And then you have the choice. If you're going to continue doing home-based school once the in-person option opens, you can, or otherwise some people will make that change. In-person school is all of the kids are sitting in the classroom with their teacher, or as many kids are enrolled in the in-school option. So in our school, we have online only, in-person, or the hybrid, and we'll get to the hybrid in a moment. But if they're offering these multiple options, that means there just won't be as many students in the classroom. Hybrid means that there might be a different schedule. It's a combination of things. So if homeschoolers like to pick and choose and have the best of all of the worlds, I think that's what hybrid is trying to do. It's trying to give like a regular schedule for, say, working families, people who need to know when their kids are going to be home and when they can be with their peers. Some schools are offering a once a week thing where they can have the option to come in, say, on Fridays and be able to do like group-based work. Some are saying, hey, we're going to have half of the kids come in the morning, half of the kids come in the afternoon, and we'll just try to clear the air in the middle and hope for the best. But that way they're still trying to social distance during the day. Then we have also got some that are saying, you're going to come Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, and Tuesday, Thursday next week, and you have a schedule where you come every other day. 2 days in person, 3 days online is actually what our school is offering. You can either choose to come on Mondays and Tuesdays or Thursdays and Fridays. Wednesdays will be the deep cleaning day, but remember, they were also letting some students come all week. So their students would be in the classroom all week, and then some of them would be home online all week. And so in that situation, the teacher is actually going to be teaching the students who are in the classroom as well as on the computer at home. Some schools are investing a lot of money into a fancy learning management system, or LMS, I've heard, I haven't seen these, like little robots that follow the teacher with the camera and the microphone. And some of them are just trying to make what they can with the laptop, just hoping that the camera and the microphone will be good enough until we can all be back together again. So it just depends. Some of them are even spread in and out. It's like 1 week or 2 weeks at a time, and then you switch. So I'm not sure in that situation if they're just given a packet of homework to work on in the meantime, or if they're actually still watching all of the classes as they progress online. So, all right, so we're changing gears a little bit. Let's talk about those of us who are working from home for a minute, or who aren't working from home and who have kids who will be at home or who don't have a place to go right now. Some schools are making an exception for families who are essential workers or have other reasons why they would need to be in school in person. But maybe you have a stay-at-home parent and a working parent, and that working parent is working from home, and so now you're juggling. In our family, we actually have both of us working from home. I work from home in the night a lot of times. I start really, really early in the morning. Currently, I've done overnights in the past, but I wake up at 2:15 in the morning so I can get a head start on my day. And my husband is working regular daytime hours. So we have 3 children, one of them, actually one in each bedroom. We have 3 bedrooms. My husband and my kindergartner are in one room. I've got a 3rd grader and a 4th grader. We're all on the same floor, and we are just listening, helping set alarms, making sure they're in their meetings on time, available if they need help, and they just kind of come in and let us know that, you know, they couldn't log in, and we'll just help fix it really quick. A lot of times we're trying to juggle meetings, and so my husband will say, I'm going to be in a meeting, it's an important one, I can't be interrupted, then I'll let the kids know that I could be interrupted if necessary. But oftentimes I'll take my laptop down to my kitchen table, sit on the couch, or just even sit in the bedroom on the bed sometimes, just so that I'm more accessible for, like, say, my kindergartner. I actually sit a lot on the floor with her. Some people who are working from home are like, hey, I can't oversee my child. I can't help them get in. I can't, you know, for those of us that are using the online program, it's still actually pretty intense for the parent. It's not like we're doing their homework for them, but just getting them uploading the materials correctly into their classroom, or making sure that they're logged in for this other thing that they need to do, their typing program or their science thing or their math skills or something. A lot of different passwords and logins, and it can be a little cumbersome. I have a kiddo who used his login from last year, which was still saved in the computer somehow, and he took his placement test for the wrong grade and he had to redo it again. It was pretty frustrating for him. So there's a lot of work. So some people are choosing to hire a private tutor to come in maybe for the 2 or 3 hours that the kids need that help, and that would allow the parents to work full-time. But some families are also forming that pod and saying, hey, we're going to be our big our big pod, our big family. We're not going to be communicating with other people. This is going to be our tutor, and we're all just going to be like one happy family. And the tutor will oversee the education of the children. Parents helper is a different option, similar to a nanny. And a lot of times I've actually hired someone, I called it my mommy's helper or something like that. This is someone who could be like a nanny or a babysitter or a neighbor or a loved one that you would pay to come in to help oversee the children, not necessarily have to teach them, but to just help them as you would. I always said, I just need you to be able to be with my children and help me with things around the house the way that I would be doing those things if I wasn't, like, literally working right now. And it's nice actually because you are in the home. You are available if there's an emergency. You can be interrupted. You can go out and take your lunch break and be with your family all together. So I was actually a parent's helper for someone when I was 10 or 11 years old. She hurt her back. She had spinal surgery, and she had a 3-month-old baby and then like 2 other young children, like ages 3 and 5 or something like that. And she could not lift her baby for like 3 months. maybe it was 6 weeks, but it was a long time in my for me. I actually went every day and I helped her for several hours, and well, her husband was at work, and I was helping her clean. I was helping transfer the baby and providing meals and doing a lot of the scrubbing. She had me busy, so I was like a babysitter in her home all of the time, except for she was there and she was in charge, but she needed assistance, and it was a pretty good gig for me at a young age. Private nanny would be the more expensive option. There's professional nannies, and then there's people who have a lot of experience who want to be a nanny in your home. I would just recommend making sure that everyone that is in your home is at the same level of exposure. So some people are starting to say, well, why don't we just do a gap year? And this term is usually used to talk about students who graduated from high school and are going to take a break before they pursue tech school or college or university or enter the workforce or a career. So a lot of times kids who are doing a gap year are using that just to work, earn money, save up, so they don't have to go into debt. Or they might be using that time to travel and see the world or experience things that they hadn't otherwise been able to. A gap year this year might be a little different with travel restrictions and things. But I think some people are kind of implying that this year might be the year that their kids in elementary or high school or middle school or something might not have the same kind of normal experience. And, we're going to take a year in homeschool and we'll just catch up next year. And it's true. I think that the teachers next year, if things return to normal, will be able to try to streamline things. There are other reasons that kids miss a full year of school. If there's a massive move across your, in your family, like across the country, and maybe the standard of education where you lived in the past is not the same as the standard that you have now. Sometimes your kid was ahead and now they are the rest of the class might be trying to catch up, or else there could have been like an illness or death in the family. So there's lots of reasons why kids might have an off year. Okay, tongue in cheek, I know. TV school, are you serious? But where this is coming from actually is I had some students. I think I mentioned that I have taught ESL online. So through the pandemic, I was really aware of how my students and my clients in China were having to do the social distancing and self-quarantine way before we were, about 2 months before we were here in the United States. So my students started telling me that they were watching school on TV. And I was like, oh, you mean like on the internet, on the iPad? And they're like, no, like literally on TV. I didn't actually ever see this, but I think I understand that they were like turning into the channel for the different grades. And, this would be a way that they could keep the kids learning throughout the year. Education is highly valued in these countries, and they don't want them falling behind. And so if they didn't have access to the internet or all of these things, they could turn the channel to watch fourth grade or third grade or second grade. At 10 o'clock, you'll watch math, and at 11 o'clock, and they were doing 7 hours of TV school sometimes. They had all their paper packets printed and everything like that, and they were working a lot throughout that pandemic. But educational shows. So for those of us who do have maybe a membership or a subscription to some sort of platform such as Netflix or Hulu or Prime Video, there are a lot of educational programs out there that are really quality, honestly. You're finding that when your kids aren't in school all day, every day, that there's a lot of, gaps. So like, for instance, when your kid goes to school, they're standing in line a lot. They're walking through the hallways a lot. They're lining up and, waiting their turn. And things are a little streamlined when you're at home. We have about 1.5 hours block of time in the morning where they're just getting their stuff done. And then there's some time where they're supposed to be doing PE. So they're exercising, taking a bike ride or something like that. And then we have lunch. They're supposed to read a book for a while. And it's designed so that they don't have to be like glued to their computer all day, which I appreciate because, we only have so much internet for 5 computers. But there are some gaps. And so sometimes if they're all caught up and they've done their household chores for the day, we're like, why don't you go ahead and turn on something? I'm going to give you a headset and your iPad, and let's watch some Number Blocks, which is our favorite show on Netflix right now. but we like Octonauts and Wildcrats and Sid the Science Kid and Magic School Bus. There's a lot of programs that, so we have a level system. We say, you may watch something if it's level 9. So our educational checklist from 1 to 10, and level 9 to us is like the very highly educational cartoons, and then level 10 would be like the straight up documentaries, like Planet Earth kind of thing, with narration and lots of real life learning. Curiosity Stream is like a $5 subscription for the year through Amazon Prime, and they have like how the pyramids were built and really educational stuff. So I'm not saying just put your kid in front of a TV all day. I definitely don't promote that, but you know, for some families, that's where you're at. You're worried about your job. You're on a production schedule. You have an important meeting. You want your kids safe, and you can be like, I can see you. I see your headset. You know, just watch your show. No judgment here. Practical life skills. So when families are together in their home, there's more dishes and more other things and more cleaning to be done. The Montessori method really talks a lot about practical life skills, and you'll see the kids sweeping the floor and washing the dishes by hand and learning how to set a table and like all of these things. And we're doing that in our family right now. My kids are learning how to unload the dishwasher and fold clothes and things that they haven't really done because I was doing a lot of that during the daytime when they were at school. And now we're all together, and it's a great time to learn basic cooking skills. There's another option that we haven't really talked a lot about yet, but no school, like a gap year or no school. Some families are saying it's just not going to happen. And I want to acknowledge the fact that there are a lot of families where the child would be better off at school, maybe more safe for whatever reason. And there are kids who are going to miss out on education. They might not have the same opportunities. They might not have access to a pod or a private nanny or a tutor or anything like that, or Outschool. I mean, I get it. We're not using a lot of those options this year either. So no school could be like your gap year. You can talk about that. I just want to say that school isn't perfect for everybody, and some kids actually might thrive during this time. I have a daughter who didn't do well with transitioning to school. She liked her teacher, she liked her classmates, she actually liked school when she was there, but getting there every day was rough, and I mean, to put it mildly. And she thrived in the springtime pandemic schooling situation. She did really, really well with online school. She was happy. Maybe her academics weren't that great, but she was really happier. She has been teaching herself how to do all these things. She taught herself how to crochet, and she and her dad are learning how to play guitar. Actually, her dad is teaching her, and it's wonderful. My kids are learning how to cook. So no school doesn't have to look like nothing. You know, even if you don't have a lot of resources for all of this extra stuff, hopefully you can go ahead and go get a library card with your utility bill or whatever they require, and just say, hey, you know, call up your librarian. They might have curbside pickup and say, do you have any bundles where I can pick up like an audiobook and a paper book? And, you know, what can I bring home for my children? One thing that I do want to say is having kids just watching streaming video and on their computers all day is sucking a lot of, like, say, the Wi-Fi, and internet shortages are kind of a thing, I think, right now. So if you can have your kids offline doing something like looking at books, or even just watching a DVD, or listening to audiobooks on like the old, not cassette tapes, but I mean, those are still a thing, right? No, like on the CDs, that can help save your bandwidth a little bit. So that's basically the end of this presentation. I do want to go ahead and say again, I can't help you make a decision about what you're going to do. I would be happy to talk with people about their choices, and just if you want to learn a little bit more, I might be able to answer some questions. One thing I can help with, because I am in the business of helping people who work from home find better work and life balance, I am offering some strategy sessions for people who are wanting to set up their workspace. And in this year, it seems that that's going to be including your children. So, for instance, we have my husband's desk in our bedroom currently, and my kindergartner is next to him. So while she's in a meeting, he can work with her, and just if she needs help, he's right there. And then if he's in a meeting, she comes in here with me, or we'll go downstairs into the kitchen and she can practice her writing or reading, or we'll just hang out in the kitchen for a while. So there are a lot of options this year. And it's overwhelming. I won't lie. It's been overwhelming for us. And we already knew which school we were going to start with and which school we wanted to stay with. And at this point, we reserve our right to change our mind, because you know what? Things are changing constantly. At some point, it actually might be easier for us to homeschool our children. You know, we want them to stay in their class. We want them to see their friends. We definitely like the idea of someone else planning their curriculum, but also being accountable to someone else's schedule and having them have to turn in things on a certain time frame. We might be more efficient doing a different model. Honestly, there are a lot of options. There are free options. We were talking about no school options, and honestly, there are free options. If you have a computer, you can log into MobiMax or Khan Academy. They often have like a 1-month trial. Typingclub.com has a free thing. You can actually put in your own lessons and have your kids type out something that you want them to learn about. And so there's a lot of options, and I can't help you make your choice, but I am happy to talk with you about how you might try to work it out with your family. If you are trying to work from home and you're going to have your children at home, I would be happy to talk with you. I actually offer an online strategy session for classrooms. It could be for if you're a teacher teaching from home or teaching from a classroom online for the first time. I'd be happy to talk with you about camera angles and lighting, ergonomics, audio considerations. I'm not an expert in all of these methods or all of these options that you might be presented. I don't know all of the learning management systems that you might be working with, but I'd be happy to talk with you about as many things as I can. If you just need to have another set of eyeballs on your classroom setup or your home office setup or your living room, just looking for where can I put my kid so that I can keep them safe and still work. I'm happy to talk with you about those things. So if you'll go ahead and find my link at yesiworkfromhome.com, or you can email me at april@yesiworkfromhome.com. I'd be happy to talk with you about a strategy session. I do them for individuals as well as families. Otherwise, I'd love it if you could join me in the conversation at yesiworkfromhome.com. We actually have a Facebook group for people who work from home, and in any capacity. You might be an online teacher, you might be working as a teleworker or as an entrepreneur. All of you are welcome into this group. I would love to do life together with you and support one another on this journey. And this year we need it, I think, more than ever. I am in a lot of groups for working moms and people who work from home, and this is a conversation that I'm seeing every single day. So I know that a lot of people do have these questions, and I hope that my very brief overview helped you in some way. I know I probably missed some options, and maybe your favorite option actually, or maybe your school is offering something that I haven't even heard of yet, which is very possible because things are changing so fast. Please be safe, be healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.